Hello chess friends and welcome to your Out of Chess channel and welcome to another truly amazing game from the computer chess rating list website, the popular CCRL. We have here the strongest chess engine in the world, the powerful Stockfish 17, battling it out against also, I would say, very strong engine, the Dragon engine, in a crazy Ragozin Defense of the Queen's Gambit declined. And this game is a little bit different. Usually we see the tactical fish, the aggressive, very sharp tactical Stockfish, but today we'll see more of a positional Stockfish, where Stockfish will perform really one of the craziest Zugzwangs that I've seen in my life. The Zugzwang is, of course, a beautiful motif in chess, where you basically force your opponent to make a move, and every other move is really bad. So the privilege that you have to play the move is actually a bad thing for you. That's the beauty about the Zugzwang. Really many times it has been performed in chess history in really great, spectacular way, but this Zugzwang is really incredible. I would dare to say, again, a Zugzwang from the Immortal category here by Stockfish 17. So let's now dive into the game. With the white pieces, the fish open with the move d4, knight Qf6 by Dragon c4, e6, knight Qf3, the counter or anti-Nimzo Indian setup. We have now the move d5, transposition into the Queen's Gambit decline, knight to c3, 3-knight variation, and now finally the Ragozin Defense with the move bishop to b4. And I think there are two good approaches. You can go, of course, into the Alekhine variation with the move queen to a4, or you can go into this more aggressive approach with bishop to g5, where we have tensions now on both sides. Basically, this move bishop to g5 is then followed with c takes d5. We have here now a little bit different move order. C takes d5 was always for me a good continuation. I've played many times. Now I switched a little bit to the Alekhine, but I hope with these two systems to get a great play against the very, I would say, strong Ragozin Defense. So after move c takes d5, the pressure is a little bit released now in the center of the board. E takes d5, and now comes, as we mentioned, this idea with bishop to g5. The downside about this bishop to g5 line is that with the move casting e3 and h6, you get a little bit exposed already. If you play bishop to h4, there are even some lines in which black will continue with the pressure with the move g5 even here. So it's not a rare case that you see also g5 here in this particular position. Here for move h6, Stockfish goes now into a more positional line, plays now calm bishop takes f6. After queen takes f6, you may think, okay, what's going on? Why would anyone give up now the bishop pair in the early stage of the game? The downside now for black in this line, although black, as we mentioned, has now the bishop pair on the board, is that the queen is a little bit misplaced. It's not really the most progressive square for the queen, although it is very active and the queen is attacking many things. Usually what you want to get is you want to bring your knight on f6, because when we traded off now the bishop for the knight, there are several light square problems that could be exposed. So that's why it's always good to have a new defender in front of the king that could protect the light square. So the downside is a little bit, I would say, in this line for black, that black will eventually in one moment have to move the queen from the square. The queen will not stay there active on f6. So as I said, these are the tiny little nuances of this opening. Of course, nothing wrong here for black. Black has still the bishop pair on the board. Let's see now how Stockfish played now in this very interesting position. So bishop to d3, immediately occupying the light squares. We have now c6, queen to b3, hitting now the bishop, and now queen to e7, which becomes now a theoretical nullity. For me, it's a surprise that no one played this line so far. Let me see. In the database, I see bishop to d6. a5 is also an opportunity to play. But queen to e7 comes with the natural idea to play this move knight to d7 that we have discussed, and then knight to f6. And then maybe if the position allows it, even for black, to fix the position around the square e4. So I think the progressive plan could be for black to maybe somehow get a nice centralization on white side of the board. After here, queen to e7, Stockfish plays now calm kingside casting, and Stockfish plan now is to play knight to e5 and then f4. Stockfish wants now also finally to cement the position around the square e5. As we mentioned, also this move h6 did several things in the beginning. Now when the knight comes on e5, it's very hard then for black to kick away the potential outposted knight with the move f6, because you have already weakened your structures. So there is also the weakness on g6. So now the main position of goal for white, as I said, is to hop somehow with the knight on e5 and then cement it further with the move f4. Knight to d7. Now here dragon competes against this potential knight to e5 move. Stockfish continues now with rook to e1, knight to f6, liberating also the long diagonal for the light square bishop. And now comes this idea: knight to e5, bishop to e6, bishop to b1. And also what could be an idea is to play then queen to c2, and in some lines, if it's possible, maybe to play knight to g4, deflect the knight from the defense of the h7 square. In some lines, if black is careless, maybe deliver even checkmate. But of course, in top AI level, this is not going to happen. But as a threat, it's, I think, very, very important to notice this move, bishop to b1. We have now rook from f to e8, a3, kicking away the bishop. Of course, dragon is keeping the bishop here on the board, doesn't want to trade it off, because it is something that black has as a slight advantage maybe in the position, but white has, of course, here the space advantage around the square. e5. We have now f4, Stockfish cements now further the knight. c5. We have now the move h3, preventing knight to g4 here by black, and now a6, with the idea to play then maybe b5, maybe if the position allows it, also the move c4. We have now rook to c1, c takes d4, and now e takes d4. Again, you see the position gets more and more simplified in the center of the board. Many pieces have been, many pawns have been traded off so far. White has this knight on e5. What black wants to do is somehow to shift this bishop over and then control also the e4 score. So that would be now also a nice plan for dragon. So the dragon continues with rook to d8, Stockfish continues with king to h2, and now comes this idea: bishop to c8. Good move, I would say here, this move rook to d8 by dragon, where dragon keeps now the rook connected and then wants to shift this bishop over and hop with the knight on e4. We have now bishop to c8, as we said, king to h1 by the fish, queen to d6. Now comes knight to a4 with the idea to now also cement this other knight on black side of the board. Now the c5 weakness is obvious in black's position. We have now bishop to c7 and now knight to c5, rook to e7, queen to d3. Stockfish continues now with this beautiful attack on light squares here, and now rook to e8 here by drag. We have now b4 supporting further this powerful knights. Look at this: knight on c5 great, knight on e5 great. So far, nice strategic and positional play by Stockfish 17. a5 here, dragon tries to undermine a little bit the support of both of these knights by kicking away these pawns that are, of course, here protecting both of these knights. We have now b5, Stockfish passes through, b6, and now knight to a6. The issue for black here is that taking out the pawn on a6 is not a good option. It seems tempting, but it seems also that maybe you could catch this pawn on a6. It becomes now maybe weakness, but actually this pawn is very, very powerful. This wasn't playing the game, but maybe you were curious what would have happened if black would have taken this knight on a6. But then the game continues with knight to e4, and then after king to h2, playing a nice calm move, protecting, of course, the g3 square, because you want to play freely with the queen. There is always a threat of knight to g3, the fork against the king and the rook. Now there are several threats. Look at this. Rook to c6 is already a positional problem for black. Queen to b5 also problem. When the queen comes into the game, and maybe when the rook comes into the game, this other rook will come into the game. So maybe you can survive this in a crazy endgame, but I think no one will have fun in this particular game with the black pieces. So here, after move knight to a6, we have now bishop to b7. The rank continues with its own plan to fix the knight on e4. Stockfish continues now, of course, with the a4, fixes now the structure on the queen side. We have now knight to e4. Finally, some counterplay, I would say, by black. Black is breathing finally this position. Now white has to also worries about this knight that's very, very nice placed here in the center of the board. Queen to e3, we have now bishop to d8, and now h4. Stockfish finally goes for the attack, and this move h4 is, I think, a very important moment of the game. It meets with a certain rule in chess that I think beginners should know, and it meets with the idea when you reach the maximum activity of your pieces. So I think when we watch now white's position, you have almost gained the maximum activity with your pieces. You cannot get really a better activity. Both rooks are on active files. This bishop is very well placed. It's aiming, as we said, this diagonal. Here the knight is outposted, the queen is centralized. This knight is already very active. It's already on black side of the board. So all of the pieces are have reached already the maximum activity, so probably the next move will be a pawn move. So that's why h4 comes with this idea. Now when you cannot get simply a better position for your pieces, you have to push the pawns. Now queen to f6, we have now g3. Stockfish fixes everything. Queen to f5, and now come king to g2, not allowing of course queen to h3, but further connecting also the king to the backward pawn on g3. h5 here by Dragon. We have now knight to b8. Stockfish uses now this moment when the rook is not covering anymore here the b8 square. We have now the move f6. As we said, Dragon had to protect the g6 square with the queen. Stockfish continues now with a brilliant knight to c6 counter play, attacks now the rook, and allows here actually Dragon to grab now two minor pieces for the rook. Two knights Dragon gained for the rook, and usually it would be a bad case for white. You shouldn't in many occasions give up two minor pieces for your rook, for opponent's rook, because you gave up 6 points against your opponent's 5 points. But Stockfish had a different idea in mind. Stockfish noticed here that the bishops are actually not so well placed, that the bishops are not really in such a good shape, because the position for them is really blocked. This bishop is simply not participating in the game at all. This bishop is having maybe some kind of activity when you play the move g5, but g5 would be actually risky because you weaken further the structure from your king. So the bishops don't really have a fun here in this particular game. Meanwhile, this bishop is attacking at least the knight, and the rooks, as we mentioned by white, have already a great activity now on both of the open files, on the c file and on the f file. So here Stockfish continues now with the tricky idea here with the queen bishop to a2, tries of course to play queen to e4. Dragon covers now the diagonal. Stockfish takes, Dragon takes, and now rook to f1. We have now queen to g6. The queen has to stay connected to the knight on e4, and now queen to f4. Stockfish threatens now a dangerous check on f8, and of course picking up the bishop on d8. We have now bishop to e7. Now Stockfish is searching for opportunity to get the rook on the 7th rank, and actually now comes, I think, what is in my opinion the most beautiful part of this game. Look at this. Dragon covers now the c7 square. Stockfish is hoping to get somehow the rook, as we said, on 7th rank, but the bishops are protecting the squares, and look how crazy Stockfish will play now in order to force, as I said in the beginning of the video, we'll have a beautiful Zugzwang where black is going to be forced to make a move in one particular moment of the game. We have now king to h7. Stockfish plays bishop to b3, rook to c1. Dragon is holding so far the position. The bishops, as we said, are not maybe the most active bishops, but now at least they're playing a very important defensive role in black setup, at least not allowing this rook to come into the game. We have now king to g8, rook to f1. Stockfish is now also desperately trying to get finally some activity with the rook. We have bishop to e7 again. Now Dragon covers with the bishop this one, and rook to e1. We have now king to h7, rook to c1, again bishop to d8. So it's now tough also quest here for Stockfish how to get this rook into the game. And in this particular position, when Stockfish shuffled a little bit the pieces, Stockfish found now again this idea, again a similar idea that we have discussed a couple of moves ago. Whenever you don't have probably a better possible activity with all of your pieces, because again the pieces have reached the maximum activity, probably the next move has to be a pawn move, and you can guess what Stockfish did. Stockfish plays now the ultra aggressive g4. Let's see now what happens if you play queen takes g4. In the game, king to g8 has been played. If you play queen takes g4, then we pick up the queen, of course, trade it off, go for the pawn, allow here black to take the pawn on h4, but then finally the rook is coming into the game. That was the whole idea about this move were to finally reach the activity for the rook. And now when the rook is coming on the 7th rank with the supported pass pawn, okay, you have a pass pawn here also by black, but it's a double pawn. The bishop is holding so far the position. It's a weak pawn anyway on g4. The bishop is attacked. In one moment the b6 pawn could be taken. When the b6 pawn is taken, then also this one is rolling, so not a pleasant position here for black for sure. So that's why after g4, Dragon tried king to g8 instead of trading off the pieces, but now bishop to d1. We have now queen to e6 and now rook to c2. What should now black do? My Stockfish engine at home suggests that you should, in order to somehow maybe survive this position, you should be aggressive here on this side of the board with the move g5. But again, it becomes not a good position for black because of queen to f5, simply forcing a trades of queens. And even if you maybe played the move g4, it becomes actually a similar position like the one before. Now Stockfish will perform a Zugzwang, where you basically play f6 and now you wait a little bit, you go with your bishop until your king can have access to the f4 square. And when the king is coming to f4, because as we mentioned, these bishops are stuck, they cannot move. If you move somewhere the bishop, okay, now you cannot even move it to e7, but as we said, these bishops are holding the position on the c file. But now the king can become very, very active. Now you can go for the h5 pawn. Bishop to g6 is now a huge threat, and after a couple more moves, I would say the position is collapsing simply here for black. So that's why for rook to c2, here queen to d7, but again queen to f5. Stockfish notices this possible Zugzwang motif where the bishop are simply stuck on this square d8 and this other on b7. Now Dragon at least found some counterplay with queen to a3, threatening a dangerous check on the g3. So that's why Stockfish covered. Dragon gets in now into the game. New check here by the fish. King to h7. We have now rook to e2, knight to c3, attacking now the rook. Rook drops back, and now queen to g6. Even if you try here knight to e4 now, if you hope to get a new activity with your knight, actually this is not working because the queen gets now disconnected from the square g6, and now after check g6 there is now a checkmate threat, and I would say again game over here for black. You don't have time, of course, to pick up the rook on f2. That's why for rook to f2, Dragon forced now trades of pieces, but actually Stockfish welcomes this move. Queen takes g6, king takes g6, and now we see this beautiful Zugzwang motif where Stockfish simply attacks. The bishops are stuck, and notice that the knight also doesn't have any more squares. So the knight is useless. The knight cannot move anywhere. You can maybe sacrifice jet on g5, but all of the other squares are taken, and the bishops cannot move anyway. If you play bishop to e7, as we said, this bishop will be attacked by the potential rook to c7 move. You cannot also move this one because then the rook is coming on the 8th rank. So the bishops are paralyzed and the knight is paralyzed. Really, really amazing position here that Stockfish created. And now king to h3, king to f5. Stockfish is waiting for black to move. Look at this. After king to h3, you have to move the king. You have to move the king, and Stockfish grabs now pawn. Really, really crazy position. As we mentioned, if you move anything else, the rook is becoming simply too powerful. Crazy stuff. So here after bishop to h5, king to f4, now Stockfish plays e6, king to e3, now e7, and mission accomplished. Now, finally, when the bishop takes, now this rook is coming into the game. This was the whole motif now for many moves, and Stockfish performed in a great way, paralyzed really all of the pieces by black. Now bishop to c8 just prolongs the game here a little bit for black. Okay, black has still 2 minor pieces on the board, but now Stockfish grabbed now this one, simply went for this one, and after a couple more moves the game was really over. Dragon played even some crazy moves. Stockfish simply pushed the pawn further, and after bishop to h5, in this particular position, Dragon resigned. So, of course, white can hold this position of the pawn. We'll play g6 to g7, and it's game over, of course, here for black. Amazing strategic game here by Stockfish. This wasn't maybe the dirty Stockfish tactics that we used to see, but I really love this kind of games where we see crazy position ideas, how Stockfish neutralized every minor piece of blacks, and the king was stuck to the defense of the h5 pawn. Stockfish played the calm, king to h3, and you have to now simply step back in one moment. The position collapsed. for black. Crazy game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. I think it's also an interesting opening here that Stockfish showed us against the Ragozin Defense. The Ragozin, I think, really one of the most popular responses to d4. Really great game, I think, from every point of view. Strategic opening point of view, I think we have seen very a great chess game here by Stockfish 17. So okay, if you want to see some other great games, great position, but also great tactical games like this, check out our Come to Chess Games Play by Computer series here on my YouTube chess channel. Here's the link to the playlist, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.